After beginning with a wide-angle view of our origins in Genesis, the Bible zooms in on one nation, Israel. God chose them to be His special agents, bringing hope back to the world. But through Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat, they end up down in Egypt. Now fast forward 400 years, Israel are enslaved under the boot of Pharaoh. So God stepped in. He parted the Red Sea, led Israel out through the wilderness and into the Promised Land. Now, we call this event the Exodus. The word means exit or way out. And it's a beautiful story of the oppressed underdog escaping from the tyrannical bully. And Exodus has inspired freedom movements ever since, including songs chanted by slaves on the plantations, and hymns like Bread of Heaven, cue the Welsh rugby fans. Then the Exodus story inspired Wilberforce, the abolition of slavery in the 19th century, and Martin Luther King, and the civil rights movement in the 20th century. But sadly, there's still so much injustice and oppression in our world, with modern-day pharaohs exercising control in dehumanizing ways. But the God of the Bible is still a freedom fighter. Now He wants to partner with us to break the bonds of injustice and release the oppressed. For us to be part of this freedom story, we first need to know true freedom ourselves. It's more than mere escapism. In the Bible, true freedom, it's about coming out of Egypt and entering into the Promised Land. It's freedom from and freedom for. So let's explore these. First, Exodus is freedom from the bad stuff. Around the 14th century BC, there was a mass exodus from Egypt as Moses led Israel out of slavery. But so what? I mean, what's this dusty old story got to do with us, right? Well, think of it like Russian dolls. Inside Israel's story is our story. We may not be physically enslaved like they were, but we can be trapped by circumstances, a controlling boss, abusive relationship, recurring debt. And we get caught in negative cycles, addiction, lust, resentment, anxiety. These can leave us feeling enslaved. So how can we experience freedom today? Well, the New Testament presents Jesus as a new exodus for the world. Just as Moses was sent to Egypt, God sent Jesus to rescue us. As a Passover lamb was sacrificed for Israel, Jesus died on a Roman cross for us as Pharaoh's grip was broken. Jesus defeated our ultimate enemies of evil and death. Our cry for freedom finds its answer in Jesus Christ. Now, for the Israelites to escape the clutches of Pharaoh, God had to part the Red Sea. You may have witnessed this epic scene in Hollywood movies, but can you imagine what it would have been like to walk down the corridor of water and out into a wide open space? In the Bible, this is salvation. It's coming out of guilt and fear and into a wide open space. And when we experience this, it's a game changer. I remember when I decided to follow Jesus and experienced a new freedom, it made me sing. I was so happy. And the awkward thing is, I can't sing. Exodus then is freedom from the bad stuff, but it's also freedom for the good life. Israel getting out of Egypt is actually only half the story. True freedom is discovering the right way to live. This is so important because our culture thinks freedom is simply more choice and less constraint. But we can have all these things and still feel trapped on the inside. As the late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks put it, the 21st century has given us a maximum of choice but a minimum of meaning. In the story of Exodus then, we're set free in order to fulfill our original purpose, becoming those angled mirrors we were always meant to be. After setting Israel free then, God brought them to a special mountain called Mount Sinai. And there He gave them instructions and laws, including the 10 Commandments, to help these former slaves now live wisely. Now without this, their lives would have been, well, like a sports match with no rules and no referee. Absolute chaos. And that's why we still need the wisdom and instruction of the Bible. It's like a freedom code that helps us flourish. Now, while at Mount Sinai, God also spoke tenderly to these ex-slaves. Out of all the nations, you will be my treasured possession. The Hebrew word for treasured possession is segula. and it refers to an item belonging to a wealthy ruler that has sentimental value. God is reassuring Israel that He loves them in a special kind of way, and that as they travel through the scary wilderness towards the Promised Land, He is going to take care of them. Now, as we journey through life with all its challenges, we also can know that we're God's 𝘚𝘩. He promises to guide us, protect us, and use us to bring freedom to the oppressed and justice for the marginalized. This is true Exodus. It's freedom from and it's freedom for. It's coming out and it's entering in. While waiting at a train station with my parents, aged 6, I decided I'd had enough of my father's restrictions, so I shook free of his hand and ran off to board the train. Unfortunately, I misjudged the gap between the platform and I fell down under the train. A pretty dark place for a 6-year-old. I can still remember looking up and seeing 2 hands reaching down. My father, the very one I'd shaken off. Sure enough, he pulled me back up to safety. You know, I got 2 things out of that experience. A free poster of my favourite train from the ticket inspector. I've still got it. But more importantly, I learned the lesson of freedom. So often we think it's shaking off God's control and going our own way. But that takes us to some pretty dark places. You know, true freedom is God our Father reaching into our darkness, lifting us out and helping us to live a new life. Now this story of Exodus invites us to experience this freedom. As Jesus Himself promised, if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. The Message translation puts it, you will be free through and through.